Once you get full-fledged movement from, family offices, hedge funds, um, they're smelling blood in the water. Once we get to that point, it's going to make what we've already seen look like not even just barely a starter. All I'm getting at is the physical markets are taking over here. Silver's still got slight backwardation, but I mean all the lease levels, all the borrow rates, everything's elevated. It just reeks of a massive short squeeze.
We're standing at a true tipping point in the precious metals market, and Bill Holter's latest analysis makes it clear that what's happening now isn't some routine upswing. It's a deeper structural break, the kind that shows the paper market is losing its grip. Holter points to the clues that always show up before a system gives way: rising lease rates, borrow rates climbing, moments of backwardation, not only in silver, but now in gold too, and a global race to accumulate real metal by sovereigns, institutions, and private wealth. When serious capital starts choosing physical metal over paper promises, the tone of the market changes. This isn't traders pushing contracts around on screens anymore. It's buyers demanding the real thing, and that flips the entire dynamic. At that point, models break, forecasts miss, and the paper structure that's been stretched thin for decades loses its ability to keep pretending everything is fine. Holter doesn't downplay the scale of what could come. For years, the system has sold contracts against metal that never existed, and you can only run that game as long as nobody shows up asking to collect. Once the first real delivery failure or inventory shortfall happens, the whole house of cards is exposed. Silver sits right at the center of that vulnerability. It's a small market with massive industrial demand and monetary appeal, so it doesn't take much to overwhelm the remaining stockpiles. Holter believes the result could be a violent, chaotic squeeze where borrowed metal is recalled, lease costs go vertical, and prices rise so sharply and so fast that the charts can't make sense of it. But woven through his interview is a warning that goes beyond market mechanics. Holter brings back the theme of the Great Taking, a scenario where financial failures spill into political responses and governments reach for whatever tools they can: capital controls, wealth grabs, restrictions on private ownership, or outright seizure. Whether or not you agree with his final destination, the message in the middle is practical and real. The type of metal you hold, the way you hold it, and where it sits could determine whether you actually control your wealth in a crisis. Holter's advice is blunt: don't assume digital access, bank custody, or IOU-style certificates will be there when you need them. Stay with us, because today we're breaking down 3 big questions Holter raises that every serious investor should be thinking about right now. What's really happening under the surface of the silver market, whether the suppression mechanisms are finally failing, and what you can do to protect your purchasing power if the squeeze hits or governments reach for more aggressive tools. If you're here for the full picture, be sure to like, subscribe, and share so others don't get caught off guard. Let's dive in.
Gold was overbought. Silver was more overbought than it was in 1980, back at the peak. And what you've seen with both of them are high-level consolidations. The paper trade is waning and the physical market is growing. The physical markets are growing. Just look at what the BRICS are doing. I mean, they're opening storage facilities, refineries. They're very serious about accumulating both gold and silver. And it makes sense because, for years and years, they had, I guess the metaphor is tons. They had tons of dollars on their books. And now they're adding tons of real money on their balance sheet. Well, obviously, price tells you that they're losing control, but let's not even talk about price. We did mention that we're in a structural deficit. We've had a supply and demand deficit for 5 years. And that's what happens when you get a small market size-wise as far as dollar amounts. I mean, the total production globally is only like $30 billion a year. But when you get a small market that's easy to manipulate, and if you're constantly manipulating to the downside and suppressing the price, what that does is it makes it much more difficult for producers to earn a profit, so they mine less silver. So, a direct consequence is the fact that we're in a structural supply deficit. Other things to look at, you can look at the lease rate on silver. You can look at the lease rate and the amount of shorts available on SLV, which is strictly paper. That's not actual physical silver. But the rates to borrow, it's blowing the shorts. The shorts are being blown up.
Once this thing really pops off, I mean, where is this going to go?
No one can tell you that. And if they do, they're making up a number. I've said for years that on gold and silver, the numbers that we're going to go to are higher than anyone has projected of any number for gold or any number for silver. The actual number, I'm convinced, is going to be far higher than the most optimistic projection there is. And the reason being, gold and silver what they've done is they've sold paper contracts against gold and against silver that don't exist. We're going to move into a failure to deliver scenario. And when that happens, man is a funny animal. When you tell man he can't have something, he wants it that much more.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking literally trillions of dollars that are going to be dislodged from the stock market, from the bond market, even from the crypto markets. And all that money is going to be pointed toward gold and silver. Those markets, I mean, especially silver being so small, they cannot handle the type of capital that's going to be heading toward a safe haven or the safe havens. And one other aspect of man, fear is the greatest emotion there is. And people are going to be moving money into gold and silver, not out of greed because, I could buy gold at 50 and I can sell it at 100 or 200 or whatever. That's not going to be the motivator. The motivator is going to be fear of losing everything in other markets and putting that money into something that is a safe haven and cannot bankrupt. That's the whole key. They can't bankrupt in a world that is defaulting.
Doesn't the fact that silver have utility kind of make it more valuable than gold, or the fact that silver has more utility than gold? Shouldn't that make it more valuable? I mean, holding the supply side constant?
Well, silver's got many, many uses. It's not just industrial. I mean, you've got technological, you have medicinal. Go back hundreds of years. You remember the term, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Well, only the wealthy people could afford silverware. And the reason they used silverware was because the antibacterial
properties.
The antibacterial that properties of silver, right? Exactly. Gold is basically strictly money, and silver for several thousand years was also money, but it has other uses. It has more uses than any other element on the planet. The other thing with gold and silver, you've got the two markets. You've got the paper market and you've got the physical market. And for years and years and years, the paper market acted like the tail on a dog that wagged the dog. In other words, paper markets made pricing. They priced the market. The problem now, because with COMEX and with LBMA, you have buyers that are lining up to take physical off the exchanges. The problem is they can't print gold and they can't print silver. The only thing they can do is print contracts that, when all is said and done, they cannot perform, which makes them worth zero. All I'm getting at is the physical markets are taking over here.
Yeah. And we saw that happen a few weeks ago when we had this point of backwardation in silver. And now the gold spot market is getting awfully close to the futures price in gold as well.
Right. Yeah. Silver's still got slight backwardation. But I mean, all the lease levels, all the borrow rates, everything's elevated. It just reeks of a massive short squeeze.
When Holter talks about silver's industrial uses, he isn't adding background color. He's explaining why silver behaves unlike any other monetary metal. Silver is the backbone of electronics, solar technology, medicine, and countless manufacturing processes. Many of these sectors can't simply cut back on demand during a crisis. That means even when investors are panicking into safe haven assets, industries are also pulling silver out of the supply chain. Now, combine that with a structural production deficit that has been in place for years. The world is using more silver than it's producing, and the inventories that could once plug the gap have been drawn down, melted, or exported. When you put all of that together, You get a market where supply cannot respond quickly when demand surges. That's why silver's upside can become explosive. You have industrial buyers, investors, and sovereigns all converging on a shrinking pool of physical metal. And if the paper market can no longer mask that imbalance by issuing synthetic supply, the price can move in ways the old models weren't built to handle. From there, Holter shifts into his broader warning about the financial system itself. He describes modern treasuries and banking structures as over-leveraged machines that look stable until the moment confidence breaks. When stress hits, they can reprice to zero far faster than the public expects. And when that happens, governments respond using whatever tools they think will preserve control. Capital restrictions, heavy taxation disguised as policy, limitations on what forms of metal citizens can legally hold, or even strategic confiscation.
The casino itself is bankrupting. So what you need to do is you need to cash your chips in now, get those chips out of the casino and out of chips. You got to convert your chips into something real. And that's basically, you need to convert your fiat currencies to gold and silver. Because the analogy of the casino being bankrupt, you've got sovereign treasuries all over the world that are upside down. This is for non-IRAs. In an IRA, you've got to do a product that's 99.9 pure. Mm-hmm. Junk silver, I've been an advocate of junk silver for the last 10 plus years now. It's the smallest denomination of silver. In other words, 14 dimes equals 1 ounce. I think it's $1.38 equals 1 ounce. Mm-hmm. So that gives you 14 transactions in a system down scenario. If you're going to barter, now you've got the smallest unit of silver. It's recognizable because everybody knows what a dime or quarter looks like. And as long as it says 1964 or earlier, you know it's 90% silver. It can't be counterfeited because if somebody comes to you with a bright, shiny, brand new dime or quarter, it's probably fake because junk circulated for years and years and years. It was in people's pockets. It should be scratched. It should be dirty. And on top of that, it is U.S. mint lineage coin. Now, the reason I wanted to talk today about junk is because the pricing on junk versus other forms of silver have temporarily collapsed. I think dealers are bidding $4 and $5 under spot if you go to sell it. And you can buy it at spot, maybe 25, 50 cents over spot. It's the cheapest form of silver available right now. The reason being, back in the late 70s and the early 80s, I'm not going to say it was the only means, but the primary means of Americans that wanted to buy silver, the junk silver, that was really all there was available for investors. So you had, you've had years since then too, but you had 5 or 10 years there where people were accumulating silver. They saw the $50 peak. You had some buyers, of course, at that level or in the 40s, and they hung on for 20, 30 years plus. What's happened is a lot of that legacy silver, when the price got to $50, people started selling. People and large hoards have been sold. What's happened is the dealers don't want to hold all of that as inventory. So if they're bidding 5%, 7%, 9% under spot, they take that junk in, they send it to a refiner, they refine the silver out of it, and then they sell that silver on the spot market, and that's how they make their profit. The problem long term, now this is a short-term problem because refiners are backed up. Some refiners are even refusing to take more junk in. They're backed up. But once this backlog gets done, the discount will abate. It'll come back to spot or above spot. And going forward, there's way less junk silver left in existence because it got melted down. So if you're buying silver today and it's not an IRA account, it's foolish to not buy junk silver. It's the best form for an American to own, and it's the cheapest. The most readily recognized form of silver that has proof positive that it's got 90% silver in it is junk silver.
I
So
see.
for those of you who bought 100-ounce bars uh, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, because it was the cheapest form, it was the cheapest form because it's the poorest form. Your 100-ounce bars are not going to work for you when the system goes down.
Will they come after our silver like they came after our gold back in the early 1900s?
Well, they didn't ever come after our gold. I mean, I think there was a dozen people got fined or had jail time. There was no door-to-door knocking. There will never be door-to-door knocking. Can you imagine how many deaths there would be the first day if you had federal agents going house to house? Give me your gold, give me your silver. I mean, there wouldn't be out in rural areas, there would not even be a discussion. There would be a gunshot, the door would close, and that would be that. I do want to mention, you said about the great, so the great taking takes place,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a Mad Max scenario. I disagree with that entirely.
Hmm.
As soon as the great taking starts to take over and people are realizing that they've lost everything, you're going to have absolute anarchy. And by definition, I mean, it's going to be a Mad Max world.
What are some of the big takeaways one can have to arm themselves and prepare for, number one, a great taking, and then number two, the subsequent Mad Max that would come after it?
Well, you get your assets into a position where they can't be taken. If you own stocks, get the certificates. I mean, owning bonds is a fool's game because no matter what happens, the debt's going to go to zero anyway. I mean, you're not going to get paid back. But if you've got big, large bank balances, buy gold. That's out of the system. It can't be taken from you unless they come and take it from you. So your preparations is to get out of the system. That's one preparation. The other preparations are for your life. Do you have ability to have clean water? Do you have the ability to create electricity if the grid's down? Do you have food supplies? Do you have a way to protect your position? Well, first off, you need to be away from population. You need to make it difficult for 50 guys to show up in your front, on your property. So if you're more remote, you have better chances. And yeah, absolutely. You need probably a dozen people at least, because you've got to sleep. There's work that's got to be done. I mean, you can't do it all on your own. It's not doable.
No, not at all. Well, I mean, Bill,
Somebody's got to have your back, and you got to have someone else's back. That's what it amounts to.
Holter closes his analysis with practical, real-world steps focused on resilience. He urges investors to convert a meaningful portion of their fiat holdings into physical metal and to do it in forms that maintain flexibility. Small, recognizable units, like pre-1965 U.S. coins, basic government-minted silver coins, and low-premium rounds, give you options in environments where electronic payments break down or where barter becomes normal. These smaller pieces are harder to fake, easier to trade, and give you the kind of transaction range you need in unpredictable conditions. Custody is another major point. Holter warns that storing all your metal in places controlled by financial institutions or pooled inventories leaves you exposed to the very risks you're trying to escape. His preferred approach mixes personal possession, private vaulting, and secure storage outside your primary jurisdiction. What matters is knowing the legal structure behind each option and making sure you aren't holding a paper claim on a pool that may vanish the moment the system strains. Holter also encourages investors to think beyond just stacking metal. He highlights forms with built-in utility and liquidity advantages, junk silver, official coins, and certain industrial-linked pieces, as complements to larger bullion holdings. And he stresses the importance of preparation. Document what you own, keep your records clear, and have a plan for accessing liquidity in more than one jurisdiction. In his view, this isn't theory. It's the difference between having wealth on paper and having wealth you can actually use when it counts. As he wraps up, Holter brings the focus back to the signals the market is giving right now: tightening lease rates, recurring backwardation, shrinking ETF inventories, refinery backlogs, and an unmistakable pattern of sovereign accumulation. These are the signs that tell you the paper market's ability to hide shortages is failing. When you pair those signals with geopolitical tensions and supply chain disruptions, the probability of an acute silver and gold squeeze becomes hard to ignore. Holter's final message is clear. If you wait for the official confirmation, you'll be acting too late. If today's breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay prepared, and protect what you can while you still have the chance.